Hi, welcome back to day 4 of the story. So far, Babe has been learning how to become a sheep pig. And so far he's not been too successful, but he's had a nice old conversation and finally met one of the sheep, and he was quite polite to her. So we'll see what happens next. He's just had a nightmare about being bad at herding the sheep. So Babe slept soundly for the rest of the night and woke up more determined than ever to learn all that he could from their new neighbour. As soon as Fly had gone out on her rounds, he climbed the straw stack. "Good morning, Ma," he said. "I do hope you're feeling better today." The old ewe looked up. Her eyes, Babe was glad to see, looked neither mad nor hateful. "I must say," she said, "you are a polite young chap. Not like that wolf shouting at me in the middle of the night. Never get no respect from them. They treat you like dirt, they do. Bite you soon as they look at you." "Do they really?" "Oh, nip your hocks if you're a bit slow, and worse, some of them." "Worse?" "Oh, ain't you heard nothing of worrying?" "I don't worry much." No, young'un. I'm talking about the sheep worrying. You get some wolves that'll chase sheep and kill them." "Oh," said Babe, horrified. "I'm sure Fly would never do that." "Who's Fly?" "She's she's our dog out there. The one that's brought you in yesterday." "Is that what she's called?" "No, she ain't a worrier, just rude. All wolves are rude to us sheep, see? Always have been. Bark and run and nip and call us stupid. We aren't all stupid, we do just get confused. If only they just show a bit of common politeness, just treat us a bit decent. Now, if you was to come out in the field, a nice well-mannered young chap like you, and ask me to go somewhere or do something politely, like you would, why, I'd only be too delighted." Chapter 5. Keep yelling, young'un. Mrs. Hoggett shook her head at least a dozen times. "For the life of me, I can't see why you do let that pig run all over the place like you do. Round and round the yard he do go, chasing my ducks about, shoving his nose into everything. Shouldn't wonder but what he'll be doing with you and Fly, moving the sheep about before long. Why don't you shut him up? He's running all his flesh off. He won't never be fit for Christmas. Easter more like. What do you call him?" "Just Pig," said Farmer Hoggett. A month had gone by since the village fair, a month in which a lot of interesting things had happened to Babe. The fact that most, perhaps, was concerned his future. Though he did not know it, Farmer Hoggett had become quite fond of him. He liked to see the piglet pottering around the yard with Fly, keeping out of mischief as far as he could tell. If you don't count the moving the ducks around. He did this now with a good deal of skill, the farmer noticed, even to the extent of being able to, once, separate the white ducks from the brown, though that must have been a fluke. The more he thought of it, the less Farmer Hoggett liked the idea of butchering Pig. The other developments were, in Babe's education, despite herself, Fly found that she took the pleasure and pride in teaching him the ways of a sheepdog, though she knew that of course he would never be fast enough to work sheep. Anyway, the boss would never let him try. As for Ma, she was back with the flock, her foot healed, her cough better, but all the time she had been shut in the box, Babe had spent every moment that Fly was out of the stables chatting to the old ewe. Already he understood, in a way that Fly never could, the sheep's point of view. He longed to meet the flock, to be introduced. He thought it would be extremely interesting. "Do you think I could, Ma?" he had said. "Could what, young'un?" "Well, come and visit you when you go back to your friends." "Oh, you could do. Easy enough. You only got to get through the bottom gate and up the hill, to the big field by the lane. Don't know what the farmer would say, though. Or that wolf." Once Fly had slipped quietly in and found him perched on the straw stack. "Babe," she said sharply, "you're not talking to that stupid thing, are you?" "Well, yes, Mum, I was." "Save your breath, dear. It won't understand a word you say." "Bah," said Ma. For a moment, Babe was tempted to tell his foster mother what he had in mind, but something told him to keep quiet. Instead, he made a plan. He would wait for two things to happen. First, for Ma to rejoin the flock, and after that, for market day, when both the boss and his mum would be out of the way. Then he would go up the hill. Towards the end of the very next week, the two things had happened. Ma had been turned out, and a couple of days after that, Babe watched as Fly jumped into the back of the Land Rover and it drove out of the yard and away. Babe's were not the only eyes that watched its departure. At the top of the hill, a little cattle truck stood half hidden under a clump of trees at the side of a lane. As soon as the Land Rover had disappeared from sight along the road to the market town, a man jumped and hurriedly opened the gate into the field. Another backed the truck into the driveway. Babe, meanwhile, was trotting excitedly up the hill to pay a visit to the flock. He came to the gate at the bottom of the field and squeezed under it. The field was steep and curved, and at first he could not see a single sheep, but then he heard the distant drumming of hooves, and suddenly the whole flock came galloping over the brow of the hill and down toward him. Around them ran two strange collies, lean, silent dogs that seemed to flow effortlessly over the grass. From high above came the sound of a thin whistle, and in easy partnership the dogs swept around the sheep and began to drive them slowly back up the slope. Despite himself, Babe was caught up in the press of the jostling, bleating animals and carried along with them. Around him rose a chorus of panting, protesting voices, some shrill, some hoarse, some deep and guttural, all saying the same thing. "Wolf! Wolf!" cried the flock in dazed confusion. Small by comparison and short in the leg, Babe soon fell behind the main body, and as they reached the top of the hill, he found himself right at the back, in company with the old sheep, who cried "Wolf!" more loudly than any. "Ma!" he cried breathlessly, "it's you!" Behind them, one dog lay down at a whistle, and in front of the flock checked as the other dogs steadied them. In the corner of the field, the tailgate and wings of the cattle truck filled the gateway, and the two men waited, sticks and arms outspread. "Oh, hello, young'un," puffed the old sheep. "Fine day you choose to come, I say." "What is it? What's happening? Who are these men?" asked Babe. "Rustlers," said Ma. "They're sheep rustlers." "What do you mean?" "Thieves, young'un. That's what I do mean. Sheep stealers. We'll all be in that truck before you can blink an eye." "What can we do?" "Do? Ain't nothing we can do, unless we can slip here past this wolf." She made as if to escape, but the dog behind her darted in and turned back. Again, one of the men whistled and the dog pressed, gradually held against the headland of the field by the second dog and the men. The flock began to move forward. Already the leaders were nearing the tailgate of the truck. "We're beat," said Ma mournfully. "You run for it, young'un." "I will," thought Babe, "but not the way you mean." Little as he was, he felt suddenly not fear, but anger, furious anger that the boss's sheep were being stolen. "My mum's not here to protect them, so I must," he said to himself bravely, and he ran quickly around the hedge of the flock, jumping onto the bottom of the tailgate and turned to face them. "Please," he cried, "I beg you, don't come any closer. If you would be so kind, dear sensible sheep." His unexpected appearance had a number of immediate effects. The shock of being so politely addressed stopped the flock in its tracks, and the cries of Wolf changed to murmurs. "Isn't he lovely? And proper little gentleman?" Ma had told them something of her new friend, and now to see him in the flesh and to hear his well-chosen words released from the dominance of the dogs, they began to fidget and look down for an escape route. Okay, we'll leave it there. We'll leave it at that kind of cliffhanger and see what happens to the sheep and Babe and see if Babe can save the day. We'll continue tomorrow.